For a long time, I just lay there, horizontal, marveling. It was far more like a bunny and far less like my attempt at a bunny those hundreds of years ago. Medium-sized, looking a bit like a cross between a hare and a rabbit. Its ears were back and twitching slightly as if it was radioing for backup. It looked at me for a good long while and I looked back, or rather it was smelling me since its eyesight was more horizontal like rabbit. Finally it raised on its back haunches and came centimeters from my nose. It pressed its little snout against mine and I could feel its breath. Real breath coming from a living thing with lungs and a heart. I missed it a little and it smiled with its eyes, pleased. I sat up and wiped my dumb face with my big hoodie sleeve. The bunny noticed people approaching from the road through the grass and froze. Then, as before, I saw its white flame begin to emanate from its body until it seemed consumed by them. It jumped alongside me on the bench and looked at me as if to comfort me that the flames were harmless. Still, I did not touch them. A woman and a very little one walked by us haltingly. "Hi," the woman said. Again, I was at loss for words. The little one said, "Bunny," and pointed at the bunny, and the woman responded, "Is that young man a bunny? Okay." The little one trailed behind, mesmerized by the flaming bunny, until the woman picked it up and it started crying. The bunny waited for a bit, then its flames began to die down. It looked at me and into me. For more than one reason, this was no average bunny. "Well, what do I call you?" I said. "You are female, bunny. I do not know why I know, not that that matters hardly for a name." "I've always wanted a bunny," I said. Funny how I never could bring myself to get one. I didn't want to have to lose it. How many bunnies would an immortal vampire go through? It would be too much for my nervous system. I wasn't in the mood to think too much about what to call a bunny, or if I should even choose a name for a clearly special bunny. We sat there for a while, neither of us moving much, more or less staring into space. I could almost feel the bunny giving me permission to zone out, or zone in as it were. I felt like a piece of me had come into place, though I did not know where it lay or what it would change, only that things were different. "Jump off," a little voice said. "Make a mess," another voiced. "Where is the dragon?" a third intoned. "Well," I said to Bunny, "shall we go?" The bunny climbed on my lap and buried its face into my hoodie pouch, just it barely fit. I felt a little hunched and awkward, but if that was what it wanted. I looked down to see its thin white flames were like a fuzzy barrier on the outside of the pocket. Where was this foresight coming from? Then I remembered, and so I traced my path the long way back to the hotel that I had stayed at. My pink bunny backpack was thankfully still there, tucked behind some potted plants. I dusted it off and considered letting the rabbit hop in, but it seemed content to play marsupial. I needed a library with a computer. Perhaps getting out of town wouldn't be such a bad idea. I made my way to the train station. Only a short walk away, there were a few police cars. Some thick-faced New England officers were talking passionately, one of them laughing, gesturing animatedly with his hands. I wanted to spy on them, but I knew what it must be. Every 100 or so years on this earth, a few dozen clearly supernatural things happen, and this small circle must encounter it and for the rest of their lives struggle with the contradiction of the rest of their mundane lives. They will revel in the feeling now, and slowly it will become like a dream. Something they hesitate to tell others, maybe even those that were there with them. The feeling is crazy-making, I think. It is better to sink back into the predictability. What benefit will they get from knowing what they know? Everything must have a use. That which cannot be commodified becomes myth, and myth to those who are not in charge is simply too close to a lie not to keep inside. Humans, Agatha said once, are ashamed at being wonderful. I didn't have a lot of cash left, but enough for a few trips, I supposed, if I ate light. I bought a ticket on the local to Boston, which was fortunately leaving just then. A police officer was on the landing as well. He looked at me oddly, probably because of my backpack. Maybe I looked more like a RISD student than a brown one. What did he know? They must be looking for someone with a package. Presumably art had been stolen. Little did they know that the only art stolen was in my front pocket, and it was not stolen because it was mine. The train brought back recent bad memory, but I saw it with new eyes. Something had touched me that day. I should have known it the moment I left the pawn shop, like a tiny vibration that stuck somewhere in the back of my head. The old woman with the red umbrella, the woman who was with the Simon guy, she had left it at the pawn shop, on purpose perhaps. I think it would be gone when I get back to Woonsocket. So what? But why were they after Harry and not me? Revenge? Revenge for some past sin of Harry's? Possible, though I did not trust Drake. Drake. Why did that name sound somewhat familiar? I think because in an old language that I have since stopped speaking once upon a time, it would have meant something interesting. It would have meant dragon. The bunny nuzzled out of my pocket and despite my protestation came out to sit next to me. I looked around but there was no one nearby. It gave itself a bath with its paws. I felt that it was hungry, and so was I. Something told me it would be fine without me, so I took off my hoodie and placed it on the seat with my backpack so it could hide if it wanted. I went to the food car and bought a tuna sandwich, lettuce, tomato. I came back to find the bunny looking out the window. It turned its head as I sat, and for a moment I thought it would speak and say, "Sorry, you startled me. I was lost in the landscape." I took apart the sandwich and offered the bunny the lettuce, and it consumed it a little too ravenously. It made too much noise, and I anxiously looked ahead at the passengers in the car. But although they did turn a bit as they heard little rabbit noises, they seemed unperturbed. Bunny nudged me quite violently when it had done with the lettuce, and I could not get the tomato off the sandwich fast enough. I suppose if you haven't eaten in so many 100 years, it must be quite the feeling. Or never eaten at all, I guess. Back Bay. The noise of the incoming station gave Bunny a little nervousness, I could tell. I offered the backpack, but it opened my pouch and jumped inside. This time, I traced my fingers against the thin white flames emanating from my pocket. Hard to explain. Neither hot nor cold, neither substantial nor absent of feeling. It made everything pause, kind of a meditative place. I took my hand away. It made me slightly sleepy. Interesting. I made my way through familiar streets. The library was just next door. The golden hour gave the city a kind of timeless wash. Faces outlined as if they come from a movie. I could read all their expressions instantly, all waiting for their cue. I could almost hear the monologue they'd spent their whole lives rehearsing. Before climbing the stairs, I took a moment, put my hoodie on, and gave myself 10 years, just because. Perhaps self-consciously from my last encounter. I found a computer. Bunny wiggled like it wanted to come out, but I gave it head scratches and told it to stay. I patted my pockets for the card. It wasn't there. Wait. All zealots ate theirs quietly, 99 Rhode Island. Phew, surely it would come back as an error if it were not in existence. Subject line. Hello. Body of email. Dear Mr. Drake, I'm writing to you as instructed. I will wait by computer for an hour, but then I must go. I will be back in the morning if I do not hear back. Sincerely, N. Sent. I waited only a few minutes before I had a reply.
Hello, Neto?
It said,
Just FYI, this is a one-time reply. I won't be able to reply to any message after this, and this will be my final correspondence and your only opportunity to reach me. I will be in Newport, Rhode Island the day after tomorrow at 3 p.m. Go to the block for the Elms and look for a sign that says AAI. It's not on Google Maps. Tell the front desk you have an appointment under Drake and want to make a donation. Give them all the cash you can. Don't worry, I will pay you back. I know I don't have to tell you that you should not bring anyone or anything threatening to this place. He isn't here. We can have a talk and I'll tell you more. Cordially, S.
There was no bus to Woonsocket that night, but I was happy to walk and think. Googling AAI came up with too many search results. There wasn't anything listed in Newport either. The bunny seemed to need to sleep. It even gave a little cute snoring sound on occasion, which gave me relief. I was glad for the hoodie as it was turning into a very cold evening. I couldn't remember the last time I was cold. It's perhaps a byproduct of my age-changing ability that my skin is not too sensitive to heat or cold, but I do not know. I guess I feel it, but I'm able to not think about it too much. Sometimes if I'm cold enough, I can shiver a little. Agatha used to tell me that Barnabas liked to go out in the rain when it was really cold and get a good shiver going. I don't know why she would tell me that. I guess she tried to get me to like him, but we did not know how to talk to each other. Perhaps his adoration of Agatha made me a little queasy. He did not know her like I did. None of them did. But perhaps I did not know who she had become and was stuck on who she was. Perhaps that has always been my problem. I was convinced that I knew what I wanted at a very young age, that my art was everything and enough, and she wanted something like answers or control. She had plans that were baffling to me, as well as the fact that she really embraced her immortality, while I would have traded it any old day for, I don't know, a gallery opening a bottle of champagne and a few dozen admirers. Is that stupid? Of course, but I think it is also human. How could two people born at almost the same instant be so different? I didn't think we were so different before the incident, but after, well, that was when we began to drift. Who could say what happened with Agatha when she went to see Baba Yaginya, and I never asked. Was I mad? No, I was glad and I was grateful, but also I felt shame that I may never have done the same, that I would have simply let my twin become, but I have gone over all of this. I was back in my old neighborhood of Beacon Hill. It's a strange neighborhood that in the darkness looks like it might have looked hundreds of years ago, minus the cars, the electric lamps. I found my old apartment. It had scaffolding still on my floor. It pained my heart that it would look different for the next occupants, but of course I did not take the best care of it. Still, I had been there a long time, even for me. Perhaps the happiest days, perhaps the most uneventful, and sometimes that is what one can count as happiness. I did slow down in Boston. I gave myself permission to forget some things, and perhaps some forgiveness came with that. One day, 1 week, 1 month less of thinking about the pain, and with that a little space to wonder at what could be. My art was neither better nor worse nor more fruitful, but the artist inside, the me making the art, was starting to see the world, almost like I had done when before I painted my dragons, though not quite as intensely as when I had lost myself the other more faithful time. The bunny kept sleeping, and so I kept walking. My legs felt strong, and as I kept going, a purity of vision began to unfold. I did not know how, but I was going to find a way to see Harry again. If for nothing else, I needed to thank him. That was all life was. Amidst the terror and heartache, it was simply time spent between recognizing the gifts we are given and finding the right words to say thank you to the ones who had given them. I listened for the bunny snores and took another turn and then another randomly down a too familiar street. They were all too familiar for an immortal vampire like me, and for the first time in a long time, I was looking forward to taking one that did not lead me down such predictable paths.